The trajectory of metropolitan Phoenix was fundamentally altered by the military-industrial investments made during the Second World War. I'm Dr. Anthony Pratcher, Assistant Professor of African American Studies, and let's talk about Phoenix during the interwar period.
Between 1910 and 1920, Phoenix surpassed Tucson to become the largest city in the state, predominantly because of the export of Pima cotton. Pima cotton was instrumental during the war for the production of rubber products, including tires.
And so both private industries such as Goodyear Tire Company as well as federal investments were brought into the Phoenix area to help increase and augment this production for wartime. The trajectory of metropolitan Phoenix was fundamentally altered by the military-industrial investments made during the Second World War.
Prior to World War I, air travel was not the main form of travel across the country. Trains were. Union Station in Phoenix became a transcontinental hub of Southern Pacific and Santa Fe and helped develop the Southwest.
The ability of people to travel to Phoenix prior to the interwar period was relatively limited, but with the advent of the Transcontinental Railroad and putting Phoenix on that main line, it transformed the ability of people to get here, not just as workers, but also as investors and as tourists. And in doing so, created economic opportunities that previously had been unavailable. Union Station was the sky harbor of its day. Due to the demand for Pima cotton, thousands of migrants came to Arizona and the area surrounding Phoenix to work in the cotton industry. So not only did World War I lead to development of technology and manufacturing, but also advanced agriculture, which led to population growth. Many of these folks worked in the fields surrounding the city of Phoenix, and these homeowners were able to provide a life for themselves and their families in a segregated community, but in a community that was self-sustaining, that had its own institutions, that had its own values. Segregation was the law of the land, but it was a law of choice. So during the early 20th century, cities had the capacity to decide how they would choose to segregate. That being said, within Phoenix, many private decisions were made to exclude people of color from access to public accommodations in the broader metropolitan area, especially in the realm of housing. So Van Buren Street was seen as a dividing line, whereas people of color, primarily African Americans, were not sold housing or allowed to rent housing north of that line. South of Van Buren is where you would largely find communities of color.
Due to their exclusion from the dominant market, people of color south of Van Buren were free to develop their own institutions to provide services to their community.
Winston Hackett, along with his wife Ara Hackett, developed the Booker T. Washington Memorial Hospital to serve communities of color that were excluded from the dominant healthcare system. This hospital was seen as one of the predominant hospitals for people of color in the early 20th century. It was known as a colored hospital, but Hackett would treat people of all backgrounds.
Ara Hackett was more than a wife. She was also a newspaper publisher. She and her husband developed one of the first Black newspapers in the state, not to mention the first Black newspaper developed and published by a Black woman.
There's Father Emmett McLaughlin. He helped create the St. Monica's Mission. St. Monica's Mission was in South Phoenix, and it was dedicated to serving communities that had been excluded or forgotten due to segregation. But out of St. Monica's Mission, he's able to develop one of the first integrated nursing programs west of the Mississippi, and eventually develops the Phoenix Memorial Hospital. George Washington Carver High School was originally known as the Colored High School for Phoenix. It was one of the premier institutions for secondary education, not just in the state, but across the region. Dozens of its graduates would go on to complete higher education across the country, and several of its alumni would eventually go on to provide leadership across the valley and the state. Most prominently, Calvin Good, who served as a councilman in the city of Phoenix for more than 2 decades.
The Great Depression of 1929 impacted the nation, particularly those heavily invested in Wall Street. The city of Phoenix weathered the severity of this impact because they were primarily still an agricultural community in the 1920s. However, various federal departments stepped in to provide resources to Phoenix anyway, helping create some of the most enduring monuments.
So during the Great Depression, and moreover, with Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, what you wind up seeing is an influx of federal money that was able to not just transform the valley, but really modernize it. So the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, and the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, these were some of the preeminent alphabet soup organizations that were developed during the time period. But they were able to help with projects across the valley, from South Mountain and the development of South Mountain Park to Papago Park to the development of Encanto Park.
The time between World War I and World War II was a pivotal moment in the history and evolution of the city of Phoenix. What started as an agricultural hub in the desert grew into a modern urban empire of manufacturing, construction, and an unstoppable entrepreneurial spirit.
And that's how the interwar period left its stamp on Phoenix. How will you?